I met Sophia at my best friend's graduation party 5 years ago. We built what I thought was a perfect marriage full of love, trust, and plans for our future. Then out of nowhere, she hit me with an ultimatum that shattered my world: open marriage or divorce. She had already lined up her first partner while I was still processing the shock. When I finally found the strength to walk away, rebuild my life, and find genuine happiness, guess who showed up at my door begging for another chance? Let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to join me on this journey of betrayal, healing, and unexpected strength. I still remember the exact moment I first saw Sophia. The graduation party was winding down and she was laughing with my friend Tyler near the punch bowl. Her dark hair caught the sunset through the windows, and something about her confident stance made me walk over without my usual hesitation. We discovered a shared passion for travel and food spending that entire evening, comparing notes on hidden restaurants we had discovered and places we dreamed of visiting. Our connection was immediate and intense. Within weeks, we were seeing each other every day. I took her to my favorite hiking trails, and she introduced me to art galleries I never knew existed in our city. We complemented each other perfectly. Where I was analytical and sometimes reserved, she was spontaneous and expressive. Together, we created a balance that felt unshakable. 6 months into dating, I knew she was the one. I planned the proposal for months, taking her back to Blue Ridge Summit, where we had our first real date. When she said yes, tears streaming down her face, I felt like the luckiest man alive. Our wedding the following autumn was everything we had hoped for. Friends and family gathered at a rustic venue surrounded by New England fall colors. We wrote our own vows, promising forever to each other under an arch of golden leaves. Those first 2 years of marriage were genuinely blissful. We traveled whenever we could save enough, trying new cuisines and taking cooking classes to recreate dishes at home. We had inside jokes, traditions like Sunday morning pancakes, and the kind of comfortable silence that comes with true compatibility. We argued occasionally like any couple, but always found our way back to understanding. Communication was our cornerstone, or so I believed. After saving diligently, we purchased our first home in a quiet suburb. It needed work, but turning that house into our home became a labor of love. Every paint color was chosen together. Every piece of furniture represented our shared taste. I could picture raising children there, growing old on that front porch. The foundation seemed unshakable. My career in financial consulting was taking off with a promotion that allowed Sophia to pursue her passion in marketing rather than the corporate job she had taken for stability. I supported her through the transition, helping with her resume and celebrating each interview. When she landed her dream position at a boutique agency, we splurged on an expensive dinner to celebrate. She seemed genuinely grateful, toasting to our partnership and future success. Our friends called us the golden couple. At gatherings, other couples would joke about taking relationship advice from us. My parents adored Sophia, and her family had welcomed me completely. We talked about children, agreeing to wait 1 more year to get financially settled before trying. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Everything made sense. The first subtle shifts began around our 3rd anniversary. Sophia started mentioning new colleagues and friends, people whose names I recognized but never met. When I suggested hosting a dinner to meet them, she always had a reason to postpone. Her phone became an extension of her hand, and more than once, I noticed her quickly switching screens when I entered the room. Our intimacy started to wane. Initially, I attributed it to work stress, her new position, demanding long hours and mental energy. I tried to recreate our earlier romance with surprise date nights and thoughtful gifts. Sometimes these efforts would temporarily bridge the growing gap, but the connection never fully returned to what it had been. Conversations became functional rather than meaningful. We discussed bills, schedules, and household matters, but the deeper sharing of thoughts and feelings became rare. When I tried to address this change, Sophia accused me of being needy or controlling. For the first time, I began walking on eggshells around her, afraid of saying something that would trigger her irritation. One evening, I noticed her password had changed on her laptop when I tried to check our joint travel account for an upcoming vacation. When I mentioned it casually, she became disproportionately upset, accusing me of spying. That night marked the first time we slept with our backs to each other, the physical distance mirroring the emotional chasm forming between us. Her late nights at work became more frequent, with vague explanations about client meetings and project deadlines. My anxiety grew, but each time I expressed concern, she made me feel irrational. I began doubting my perceptions, wondering if I was manufacturing problems where none existed. The gaslighting was subtle, but effective. The breaking point came when I accidentally saw a text notification on her phone while she was in the shower. A name I had never heard before Justin with a message that began last night was, before cutting off. My hands trembled as I set the phone down, trying to imagine innocent explanations, but finding none that fit our recent reality. My friend Tyler noticed my withdrawal and weight loss. Over beers one night, everything spilled out. His concerned expression confirmed my worst fears were not paranoia. He suggested counseling, and I managed to convince Sophia to attend one session. She was distant and defensive throughout, refusing to schedule a follow-up. The therapist gave me a sympathetic look as we left that I now recognize as pity. I will never forget that Tuesday night. I had just finished preparing dinner, Sophia's favorite pasta dish, hoping to reconnect over a quiet meal. She walked in, placed her bag carefully on the counter, and said, "We need to talk." The calmness in her voice terrified me more than anger would have. She suggested we sit in the living room away from the meal I had spent an hour preparing. "I have been doing a lot of thinking about us," she began, maintaining eye contact with an unsettling steadiness. "I feel constrained in this marriage. I need more freedom to explore connections with other people." My fork clattered against the coffee table as she continued. "I want an open marriage, Hassan. Either we open our relationship, or I want a divorce." The room seemed to tilt sideways. I struggled to breathe properly, my chest constricting as though concrete was hardening around my lungs. "Is there someone specific?" I managed to ask already, knowing the answer. Her hesitation told me everything before she reluctantly admitted there was someone she had developed feelings for at work. "His name is Justin. Nothing physical has happened," she claimed, though her averted eyes suggested otherwise. "But I want the freedom to explore that connection, without sneaking around." The casual way she dismantled our vows felt like a physical blow. I pleaded for explanation, asked where I had failed, what had changed. Her answers were vague references to personal growth and life experiences she felt she was missing. That night I discovered the extent of her emotional affair through texts she finally showed me after hours of confrontation. Justin was not just a colleague, but her new marketing director, 10 years our senior, with a reputation for office relationships. They had been messaging for months, their exchanges filled with inside jokes and thinly veiled references to attraction. When I pointed out the inappropriate nature of many messages, Sophia became defensive. "This is exactly why I need freedom. You are trying to control who I can talk to and how." The breathtaking reversal of victim and offender left me speechless. This woman who had promised forever was now framing my expectation of fidelity as oppression. Sleep evaded me for days as I grappled with her ultimatum. I suggested counseling again, this time with a different therapist. "I am not the one with the problem," she responded coldly. "This is about what I need to be happy. You need to decide if you can accept that or not." In my desperation to save our marriage, I reluctantly agreed to her terms, believing we could establish boundaries that would minimize my pain. We drafted rules that seemed reasonable on paper. Advance notice of dates, no bringing partners to our home. Regular check-ins about feelings, and veto power for both of us. The reality proved far more devastating than I had imagined. Within days, Sophia was spending evenings with Justin, coming home late smelling of unfamiliar cologne. Each time she left, I died a little inside. My attempts to utilize the same freedom felt hollow and wrong. The few dates I forced myself to go on were disasters, my heart too shattered to connect with anyone new. The boundaries we established eroded quickly. Sophia began staying overnight with Justin, ignoring our agreement about returning home. When confronted, she would accuse me of stifling her happiness. The gaslighting intensified, until I began wondering if monogamy was indeed an unreasonable expectation, rather than the foundation of the marriage we had both agreed to. The lowest point came on my birthday. I had made reservations at the restaurant where we had celebrated our engagement, hoping for a few hours of connection. At 6 that evening, I received a terse text. Something came up with Justin. Rain check. I sat alone at that table, canceling the special dessert the restaurant had prepared, smiling painfully at the server's confusion about my missing spouse. My mental health deteriorated rapidly. I lost 15 pounds, my clothes hanging from my frame like borrowed items. Sleep became a luxury, with most nights spent staring at the ceiling, retracing every step of our relationship, looking for signs I had missed. Panic attacks became frequent, sometimes striking during client meetings and affecting my work performance. My supervisor pulled me aside after I blanked during an important presentation, suggesting I take some personal leave. Friends stopped calling after I canceled plans, repeatedly unable to muster the energy for social interaction. The isolation deepened my depression until leaving our bed required monumental effort. Rock bottom arrived unexpectedly at a local cafe where I had gone to escape our empty house. Through the window I spotted Sophia and Justin walking hand in hand, laughing with an intimacy that had once belonged to us. I slipped into the bathroom, a full panic attack overtaking me as I slid down against the wall, gasping for air between silent sobs. My brother Ahmad found me there, after the concerned barista called him from my phone. He took one look at my state, and helped me to his car, driving in silence to his apartment. That night, as I lay on his couch, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, he said words that finally penetrated my fog of pain. "She does not deserve another minute of your suffering." This is not love, Hassan. This is abuse. The moment of clarity arrived unexpectedly. While packing some clothes at our house, I found our wedding album pushed to the back of the closet. Flipping through the pages, I saw the hope and devotion in my eyes contrasted with something I had never noticed before in Sophia's expression: a reservation, a distance. Perhaps it had always been there, and love had blinded me. That afternoon, I contacted Sarah Williams, a divorce attorney recommended by a colleague. Her straightforward assessment of my situation was both painful and liberating. "You are being manipulated," she stated plainly. "From a legal standpoint, you need to protect yourself immediately." She helped me understand my financial options and the importance of documenting Sophia's infidelity. Following Sarah's advice, I secured copies of all financial records and opened a separate bank account, transferring half of our savings. I found an affordable one-bedroom apartment 20 minutes from my office and signed a 6-month lease. The property manager, an older woman named Darlene, seemed to recognize the look of a man starting over and gave me the keys a week early without additional charge. I moved essential belongings while Sophia was away for a weekend with Justin. My brother and Tyler helped transport furniture and boxes, working efficiently to avoid confrontation. When Sophia returned to find closets half empty and my personal items gone, her panicked calls began. I let them go to voicemail, each message shifting from anger to disbelief to pleading. The divorce papers were delivered to her office 3 days later. That evening, she appeared at my new apartment somehow, having obtained the address from our joint Amazon account I had forgotten to separate. "You cannot be serious," she said, her voice cracking as I maintained the doorway boundary, not inviting her in. "We can work through this, modify the arrangement." "There is nothing to modify," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "You made your choice when you chose him. I am simply honoring that choice by setting you completely free." The shock on her face suggested she had never truly believed I would leave, that her safety net would always remain in place regardless of her actions. Establishing independence became my full-time project. I created new routines deliberately different from our shared habits. Instead of pancakes, Sunday mornings became early hikes in nearby state parks. I replaced our regular takeout spots with cooking experiments, teaching myself to prepare meals I had always wanted to try. My career became a welcome distraction. I volunteered for projects requiring travel, building a reputation for reliability during crisis situations. 6 weeks after moving out, my director called me into his office. Instead of the performance warning I feared, he offered a substantial promotion with management responsibilities. "Your focus and determination these past months have been noticed," he explained. "Sometimes personal fire forges professional steel." Through my health insurance, I began weekly sessions with Dr. Rodriguez, a therapist specializing in betrayal trauma. His validation of my experience contradicted months of gaslighting. What happened was not a communication issue or a difference in relationship styles, he assured me. Betrayal is betrayal, regardless of how it is framed by the perpetrator. The gym became sanctuary and battleground, a place to exhaust my body enough that my mind might rest. Each additional weight represented anger transformed into strength. The physical changes came gradually, then suddenly. At 4 months separated, I caught a glimpse of myself in the studio mirrors, and barely recognized the defined shoulders and clear eyes looking back. Old friendships I had neglected during my marriage began to revitalize. My college roommate James invited me on a fishing weekend with guys I had not seen in years. The easy camaraderie and complete lack of judgment allowed my first genuine laughter since the separation. None of them asked about Sophia directly, but their silent support spoke volumes. A cooking class at the community center introduced me to flavors and techniques I had never attempted. The weekly structure provided anticipation beyond work and therapy. The instructor Marcos noticed my enthusiasm and suggested I consider competing in an upcoming amateur cook-off. The prospect of a goal unrelated to my divorce brought unexpected joy. My journaling practice, recommended by Dr. Rodriguez, evolved from tear-stained accounts of pain to reflective observations about my growth. Entry by entry, I processed the anger that had initially threatened to consume me. Forgiveness is not about excusing behavior, I wrote in month 5, but about freeing myself from the weight of resentment. She will carry her own consequences. Setting boundaries became a transferable skill. I declined a project with a demanding client known for midnight calls, something I would have automatically accepted before. I told a friend his constant cancellations meant we would need to reschedule, at my convenience next time. Each small assertion of worth strengthened my resolve in the larger boundary with Sophia. The divorce proceedings continued, despite her delays and emotional appeals. She contested our prenuptial agreement, claiming duress during signing. When that failed, she attempted to claim portions of my recent promotion bonus. Sarah Williams calmly countered each maneuver, protecting my interests with professional detachment I deeply appreciated. 6 months into our separation, I purchased a small house closer to downtown, using my portion of our home sale as down payment. The property needed updates but had character and history lacking in our suburban starter home. Each renovation decision reflected only my preferences, from the deep blue kitchen cabinets to the dedicated office space overlooking the backyard. At a community garden volunteer day, I met Layla, an environmental engineer with warm eyes and a quick wit. Our conversation flowed naturally as we planted seedlings side by side, but I felt no pressure to extend the interaction. She seemed equally comfortable with silence, focusing on the task, rather than filling space with nervous chatter. When she suggested coffee after volunteering, I surprised myself by accepting. The 2 hours we spent talking about everything from climate initiatives to favorite childhood books felt refreshingly uncomplicated. We exchanged numbers with explicit understanding that friendship was the only current offering on the table. Our friendship developed gradually over weekly coffee meetings and occasional hikes. I was transparent about my ongoing divorce and healing process. Rather than scaring her away, my honesty seemed to establish a foundation of trust. Broken and healing are very different states, she noted once. One is stagnant, the other is in motion. You are clearly in motion. The contrast between this healthy connection and my marriage became increasingly apparent. Layla never made me feel responsible for her happiness or emotional state. She maintained her own friends, interests, and boundaries, while showing consistent interest in my well-being. The absence of anxiety in our interactions highlighted how abnormal my walking on eggshells with Sophia had become. 8 months after moving out, my doorbell rang on a Sunday morning. Through the peephole, I saw Sophia looking thinner than I remembered, clutching her purse with white knuckles. Curiosity rather than anxiety prompted me to open the door, maintaining the threshold boundary as I had during her first uninvited visit. Justin ended things, she blurted before I could speak. He met someone at a conference. Younger, an intern at another agency. Her voice cracked with familiar vulnerability that once would have immediately drawn me to comfort her. I felt a distant compassion but no urge to rescue. I am sorry to hear that, I replied truthfully. That must be painful for you. The genuine but detached response clearly surprised her. She had expected either rejection or immediate comfort, not this calm middle ground acknowledging her pain without accepting responsibility for it. I have had time to think about everything, she continued, words tumbling out rapidly. I made a terrible mistake. What we had was special, real. I threw it away for something that was never going to last. Tears formed in her eyes as she gestured toward my home. Can I come in? We should talk about this properly. I do not think that would be helpful for either of us right now. I responded, noting with surprise my lack of emotional turmoil. The divorce will be final in 3 weeks. We both need to move forward. Her expression shifted from hopeful to incredulous. Move forward, Hassan. I am telling you I want to try again. That I made a mistake. Her eyes took in my changed physique, the confidence in my posture. You look good. Really good, actually. Thank you. I am doing well. The simple truth of this statement resonated deeply. I was genuinely doing well, perhaps for the first time in years. I wish the same healing for you, but it needs to happen independently from me. Sophia's attempts to reconnect escalated over subsequent weeks. She sent emails detailing our happy memories, text messages. At times she knew I would be alone. Mutual friends reported her tearful inquiries about my well-being and relationship status. Each attempt met the same calm boundary, neither cruel nor encouraging. Her tactics shifted when gentle approaches failed. She contacted my mother, playing on the close relationship they once shared. Sophia called me crying, Mom reported during our weekly call. She seems genuinely remorseful, Hassan. The lack of pressure in her tone told me everything about how her perception of Sophia had changed since learning the full story. Everyone deserves forgiveness, Mom, I agreed. But forgiveness does not automatically mean reconciliation. Some bridges cannot be rebuilt once burned. Her quiet acknowledgement validated my position without requiring further justification. The most alarming escalation came when Sophia appeared at my office building during lunch. Standing beside the revolving doors, she created a scene impossible to avoid, without seeming callous to observing colleagues. "Just 5 minutes," she pleaded, as I reluctantly agreed to speak in the courtyard. Those 5 minutes became 30, as she cycled through every emotional appeal imaginable. "We have history worth saving," she insisted. "People make mistakes. Marriage is about forgiveness." When rational arguments failed, she shifted to accusations. "You are doing this to punish me. This perfect new life, the weight loss, all of it is about making me regret my choice." "My life is not about you anymore," I stated simply. "That is the natural consequence of your decision. I am building something new that belongs only to me." The clarity in this boundary visibly disturbed her, the realization dawning that her actions had created permanent change. Layla provided unexpected support during this turbulent period. Never pressuring or questioning my handling of the situation, she simply created space for processing when needed and distraction when beneficial. "Your ex is having trouble distinguishing between your worth as a person and your utility in her life," she observed after hearing about the office incident. "That distinction is not your responsibility to teach her." My final conversation with Sophia happened 2 days after the divorce was finalized. She had requested meeting for closure, and against my better judgment, I agreed to a public coffee shop discussion. She arrived looking composed, but with telltale signs of sleepless nights. "I just need to understand why you will not even consider trying again," she began, eyes pleading. "We had 5 years together. Does that mean nothing compared to 6 months with this new woman?" "This has nothing to do with Layla," I clarified gently. "This is about the fact that when given the choice between our marriage vows and your desires, you chose yourself without hesitation. That moment cannot be undone. People can change," she insisted. "I have changed. I understand now what I threw away. I believe you," I acknowledged, maintaining eye contact. "And I hope that understanding brings you peace and better choices in your next relationship. But sometimes the lesson from one relationship becomes the foundation for the next one with someone else." As tears slid down her cheeks, I felt the final thread of our connection gently release. Not with anger or bitterness, but with acceptance that some chapters must fully close before new ones can properly begin. "I wish you healing, Sophia. Truly. The journey from devastation to strength had transformed me in ways I never anticipated. The man who once begged for scraps of affection now stood firmly in his worth. The heart that had felt irreparably shattered now beat strongly, capable of caring deeply but wisely. The life that had seemed destroyed revealed itself as merely a chrysalis, breaking open to something more authentic. My relationship with Layla continues to develop with intentional slowness and mutual respect. We discuss boundaries openly, share expectations honestly, and value independence alongside connection. The contrast with my marriage illuminates how much unnecessary suffering I accepted as normal for too long. If you have ever had your heart broken, been betrayed, or lost yourself in someone else's story, know that reclaiming your narrative is possible. The pain does not simply vanish, but it transforms into wisdom that protects you moving forward. Sometimes losing what you desperately thought you wanted creates space for what you truly deserve. Have you ever had to rebuild after betrayal? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and hit that like button. Your support helps this channel grow, and your stories remind us all that healing is possible, even after the deepest wounds. Thank you for joining me today.